guys, Professor Theo here on Common Sense. I recently put out a video about holistic bodybuilding, my alchemical process that I practice myself and teach to others, where natural bodybuilding is a cornerstone in a larger holistic work on the self, meaning we work on ourselves on every level, but first of all, just elevating physically is going to elevate you in every way. It won't improving your physical health and aesthetics won't automatically solve some kind of mental issue or depression or whatever you're dealing with, but it will, the hardware running well is going to make everything easier. So it's that, but also that we look at ourselves in the gym, see our patterns and tendencies, and know that how we do something is how we do everything. So, if there's something that I see about myself that's not great in the gym, maybe I'm a pussy, maybe I don't push hard enough. That would never be me, by the way, it's the other way around. But maybe I hold myself back. I don't push enough in my goals in my life. So if I improve in the gym, maybe I'll go after things harder in the rest of my life. And then lastly, just that some concepts that are quite concrete in the gym, like progressive overload, or we add weight to the bar, to improve. We can take these concepts and apply to any process we're trying to improve on in our life. But of course, if we're doing holistic bodybuilding, where natural bodybuilding is a cornerstone, we're going to have an approach, a philosophy, and a method that we apply. So today I want to present to you Uncommon Sense Bodybuilding, my approach to the actual training, bodybuilding side of things. This is what my book that I have currently is about, Uncommon Sense Bodybuilding. It does contain more philosophy, mindset stuff that we're not going to go into all of it in this video, but the point is, it is as it relates to the actual training. I have the holistic bodybuilding book planned too, but that book is really focused on the training. What I'll say is, what I think is kind of unique with my book is that I'm attempting to coach you through the process, not just tell you about exercises, sets and reps, programs, splits, this muscle does this and that too, but just as much as you know, and then I'm kind of, as you need to know, and then I kind of try to just paint a picture of this is what the process looks like and make you focus on the right thing and steer you in the right direction. But so today, I want to actually just talk about my approach, Uncommon Sense Bodybuilding. Okay, so first of all, we have aesthetics plus that I put. There are kind of twofold meanings to this. First of all, I think the way bodybuilding, what it has ended up to as today, is a sort of perverted form, with the steroids, first of all, that aren't healthy at all. And it doesn't even look good when you're too huge like a monster. And this thing that it's become, that it's all about being on a stage with as much mass as possible, with as low body fat as possible, with a spray tan and posing in speedos, And I think that has negatively impacted competitive natural bodybuilding as well, because now those guys diet down to super low and they just look emaciated. Most of them don't really look that good at that low body fat percentage. So my aesthetic ideal would be more something like the silver era, right? Where, they got lean, right? But not ridiculously so like that. So what I usually preach is, because I like a lean look, I'm bulking now, I definitely prefer to be on the lower end of the body fat percentage spectrum, but 10 to 18% body fat-ish. If you can stay within that range, that's what I like. But because 10% body fat, that's really damn lean, And the 18% body fat, if you put on some muscle, you're never gonna look too fat on that. You might say I might be like 18% now. But yeah, so it's that, just the adjusting of no spray tan, no ridiculous shreddedness, like a healthy body fat range that looks good, right? But also that it's not just about the look of the body. The training is such a huge aspect of this. It shouldn't just be a means to an end. We want the training to be aesthetic also, right? To me, I've always wanted, like we're gonna go into the other things that kind of seamlessly goes together, but I don't want to just do whatever blows my muscle up, even if it's some ugly shit, boring exercise, I want my training to look aesthetic, right? I want to move heavy weight within a long range of motion with control, right? And execute it in a very specific way. Maybe just take a bench press. Like, of course, this is not so unique, but control it on the negative and pause and explode up and control it, this kind of thing. So to me, it's not just about what the body looks like, the sculpture. In the end, it's how the body moves, right? I put functional within quotes because it's not like this gimmick, like, oh, you can be super athletic and you do weird jumping around unilateral exercises or something. Like, no, we're definitely going to do strength and hypertrophy focused training. But to me, I always want it to be more athletic options mainly, right? That as much as possible, we're going to use some pure bodybuilding, some machines just to address certain things, but that's more the icing on the cake. As much as possible, we want this muscle, the physique that we build, to be an expression of ability. So, you know, maybe a barbell bench press isn't the most athletic exercise, you're lying on your back and that, but it's still, instead of a machine that completely stabilizes everything for you, you still have to control, move the weight through space like that. And a typical example, I think I'm rolling some clips during this video, typical example that I do is that, you know, I've had some hip issues, therefore my legs aren't exactly small, it's better now, but they have lagged behind a bit. They used to be a strong point. And stability has been the main issue. And I know that I could have kept just blowing up my legs like that if I just did a leg press where I don't really need to think about stabilizing a lot. But I just don't want to. I just don't want that to be part of my bodybuilding, right? There is aesthetics. I want to max out size and aesthetics, but not at any price, right? So to me, I've realized that I'm quite posterior chain dominant, more so than I thought. So I finally got weightlifting shoes. I really worked on my squat form to be able to, you know, target the quads as much as possible. And to me, it's been worth it to work on this skill instead, changing the way I squat and approach a squat so that it can become a good quad exercise and I can build bigger quads that way, instead of just sitting in a machine that just does all the work for me except pushing the weight, you know. I'm just not interested in that. So to me, it goes all in together that it's much more aesthetic to move into deep ass to grass front squat, you know, pause maybe even, explode up, you know. It's more functional. I've got a great hip mobility from this, okay? We're gonna use our core a whole lot more. It looks a lot cooler, right? So this to me, this is like the this is like the cornerstone. Some words you just overuse, you know, but the main exercise selection, I want to be as athletic as possible. Don't rely on machines, but I'm not against machines. Like, some of them are great, and to address like weak points and just isolations and these things, you know, extra volume for certain muscles. Machines are great, right? I'll take an example, like a pullover machine. The gym I've been going to for a little less than a year now. They have a pullover machine that I always was looking for. And to me, that's like the best version of a pullover. You can easily isolate the lats. It's very easy to progressively overload. Just keep throwing on plates on the machine, right? So since we are bodybuilders, we can do certain things to just like, this is just because I want to strengthen this muscle, this will blow this muscle up. But as much as possible, first we think like, what's the coolest, most aesthetic exercise, what would give me the best function as I put on muscle, and then we can fill in the blanks with some machines, right? Powerbuilding, in quotes again, because it's people have a slightly different definition of that. Some people really mean like training as a powerlifter for the big 3 squat, bench, deadlift, you know, and then throwing in some hypertrophy stuff as the icing on the cake. To me, because then you still use the powerlifting form, right? Like maybe a big arch on the bench or very wide grip, like a low bar squat when you kind of hip hinge, turn it into almost a good morning and such, you know. This does not interest me in general, but also not the best way to, it's not the most hypertrophic way of performing these exercises. And also, we might not, in our goals, we might not be about just getting a big 1 rep max on an exercise. Nothing wrong with that. I will go for it on certain exercises every once in a while, you know. And if you see that you're close to a number, maybe you're like, oh, I'll try to get that personal best. But generally, what we're looking for is getting stronger on big movements, but like, instead of thinking the 1 rep max that would pass some kind of competition standard, it's like, no, I want to pass my standard first of all for a good form, but then maybe instead of a 1 rep max, it's like, what weight do I use for my working sets? What can I rep? And improving on that number. And I put spicy compounds, as in not necessarily that they have to be spicy, but it's a little bit this that, you know, I would never do a low bar squat ever, like just not interesting to me at all. And I'm super strong in my posterior chain. This is like my strongest point. I could move so much more weight than doing a high bar squat. High bar squat is of course not necessarily spicy, but even the front squat that I said, I love being front squat. I don't think that it's a worse quad builder when you really nail down the skill and, you know, approach it in the right way. But to me, it's spicy in the sense that it's still more difficult than just a back squat, right? But so the spicy element, it's what I mean here is just that not just the form that you could move the most weight and pass a competitive standard, but also maybe that we actually pick some variations that it's not just about what's like optimal for building muscle. It's like, no, this compound is cool. This is the way I want to build muscle. I don't care if there's a, you know, better alternative, or better, you know, better, you see what I mean? But also just that when we aren't like gonna compete in a bench press, like a flat bench press, not the favorite exercise of mine. It's nothing wrong with exercise. I would program it for many clients. I do it every once in a while. But many times I think when we don't care so much about having a big 1 rep max on a bench press, for instance, there are many better options to build the chest and the pushing strength, like let's say a weighted ring push-ups. That's a spicy compound in that way, right? Then isolations, and every exercise is important. What I could have put here too is just to point out that there are something in between. Of course it's a spectrum with exercises in general, but I like to categorize exercises kind of into 3, that we have the biggest compounds, which would be our like barbell squats, deadlifts, bench presses, rows, weighted calisthenics, like weighted ring push-ups, dips, chin-ups, pull-ups, you know. And then there's some kind isolations will of course be something very like a bicep curl, lateral raise, something like that. But there are these mid-tier exercises where there's a movement across more than one joint, but it's just not as meaty as these compounds. A good example would be like a lat pull down. Nothing wrong with a lat pull down, but it's just never gonna be as meaty of an exercise when you actually hang with all your weight and extra weight, you know, like that. When you just sit and it's a cable, good exercise, but it's never gonna be quite the same. But the point is still, and I want to say, just because I started talking about that, something like a dumbbell press I would put as sort of a mid-tier between isolation and compound, but some of these we can definitely approach as a compound, like if that's all we have access to, or in my case, for instance, I kind of stalled on barbell presses, like the flat and the incline. So right now I'm like, well, let's do dumbbells for the incline. That's like my main exercise on a push workout. And then maybe because I do it when I'm fresh, instead of taking slightly lower weight and maybe a bit higher reps, maybe 8 to 12, maybe now I'm like, okay, I have 6 to 10 reps, and since I'm fresh, I can use heavier dumbbells, right? But the point is that every exercise is equally important. Of course, the compounds are always the cornerstone. They address more muscles at once. They're the ones we can use most weight, most, you know, room for progressive overload. So that's always, you know, if I have to pick, like, oh, am I supposed to do only isolations or only compounds? You know, it's like, okay, compounds. But when we're a bodybuilder looking to really perfect our sculpture, we need, like, all of them are important. And the isolations and some of the second tier exercises after our main compounds, they sort of fill in the blanks with the physique. And of course that depends on your body type. Like in my case, for instance, it's definitely the arms that needs more love with isolations, quite torso dominant. But just to say that, yeah, all the exercises, when, like if you are a power lifter, actually just training for strength, of course you have some accessories that matter, but definitely the compounds are always the most important. For us, it's like, well, the compounds do the most, but our physique will be incomplete if we don't address the weaknesses, fill in the blanks, so to say, with mid-tier and isolation exercises. So now let's talk about the form that I like to use that goes into the aesthetics, but definitely also what I think produces the most results, right? So I put cheat form. I think this is kind of ridiculous sometimes, like, you know, with all the science-based stuff. Yeah, actually, I saw, it just hits me now, I saw Jeff Nipper did a study when he compared like cheat form to strict form, and to his big surprise, the muscle growth was the same, you know. I think it was untrained subjects, first of all, but the point is like, let's not compare strict form and cheat form. The point is that You know, I don't think there's anyone that just thinks that you should always be just yanking around weight, you know. Like, what I mean when I put it like this is that so many exercises, the best form to use, there's gonna be something in between strict and just completely yanking around. The best examples would be like rows, you know. Like, if I start out a dumbbell row, I have to use support. You know, I always go into deep stretch here, use a little bit of raising my body up. I'm not gonna be planted here, right? But then maybe if I set some kind of goal I'm trying to reach and I'm just starting to lose a bit, maybe I just start yanking it a bit more at the end. So you see, it's like, it's never 100% strict from the start, but just as much movement in the torso as I need to complete a good rep, you know. And then maybe to just get, you know, really burn out that set, maybe I use a bit more cheat towards the end. But to me, it's so stupid to put like cheat form versus strict form. It's like, no, and on many exercises I would start completely strict and then start, like take like a triceps push down or something. Maybe when I start to feel I'm like close to failure, I would fail on a strict rep. Maybe I like actually put a bit more like explosion, explosivity, whatever, but also kind of crunch it down a bit more. Many examples like this, but control, that's the point. Control, now there's been, I think people are opening their eyes now that super exaggerating the eccentric pencil neck style is just not necessary. We as long as we control it, that's why, again, with this row, I don't need more than a 1 to 2 second eccentric. I just control it and I get into a good stretch every time. There's no need to go, if I'm doing this shit, I'm gonna end up using weight. That's too little for me, that it isn't like really stimulating much. So control, as long as you're not using too much weight, that you can't control it at all, or that you just don't control it, that you just drop it every time, that would be no good. But as long as you feel like I am actually, even if it's moving the other way, I am de-accelerating it, you know, I am controlling it. That's the important part. Like, I think Eric Bugenhagen would say, like, you want to hoist heavy ass weight, but you need to control the eccentric, but that's it. Okay, my big thing, one of the things that's, did I not even put the stretch here? Because that's something I want to say. It's one of the things that I think the science-based guy get right, but I discovered it, by the way, without like any science. It was, if anything, it was from knees over toes guy, the ATG stuff, you know. But also my experience that when you emphasize the stretched position in an exercise, it is good for hypertrophy, but also you're going to end up improving your flexibility. And this goes into the, well, aesthetics. I think it looks cool with, for instance, an ass to grass squat, but that deep stretch, it actually improves, it's functional. It was going to improve your flexibility at the same time. So as often as possible, on any row, for instance, I will always take like that little second, just get into full stretch, and I pull explosively, but always take that little, get into the good stretch. I actually went to professional like athletic massage guy, and I've been looking for the right guy for a long time. We had a good experience, but he confirmed to me that, like, yeah, you have your like points, you have little, you know, owies in a few places, but as a whole, your fascia is very soft, or, you know, mjukt, we would say in Swedish. Like, you're not stiff, pretty much, even though you're so strong, or big, muscular, lift heavy weight. So that's the thing. Emphasizing the stretch as often as possible is, you want to have some option for that, like that for every muscle. It's good for hypertrophy, but also for our flexibility. And I just think many exercises look quite beastly when you go into a deep stretch. But last thing to say about that is just that it doesn't have to be literally every exercise, but it would be good for every muscle group that you have at least one option where you get a really, really good stretch on that muscle. But yeah, intensity is my thing. That's like, you know, people want to argue about reps in reserve and this and this and that. You know, it's like, to me, no, there's so few people that need to even hear about that. Like, I don't personally like that kind of approach at all. When I don't go to failure, I use other systems that I won't really have time to go into here, but mainly, like, what I feel like has driven most of my progress is that I train so freaking hard. Okay, I train so super, super hard. Pretty much, with a few exceptions, like big compound, often lower body compounds, I train to failure every set. And very often I have almost a rule, it's like my standard, 3 sets on an exercise. Sometimes when I just feel like I got the job done sooner, I remove 1 set. But the last set is some kind of drop set. If not, if in a machine, it's so easy to just, like say lat pull down, to just move down 20%, do like 3 more reps, move down another 20%, 3 more reps, boom. Like to really burn out that last set. But it can also be something like a mechanical one that, you know, again, that you start with a strict form, let's say a curl, and then you just use a little bit of hip thrust and control the negative to be able to go beyond, really burn that muscle out. And it could be like one, I'm sure I'll show a clip like that, when a dumbbell press, you know, in the last set I like to, when I get that last rep, drop 1 of the dumbbells and keep going with 1 dumbbell. These are just some few examples, but I like it. I just like it, you know, high intensity. It has been worked out great for me. When people ask about like, how can you recover from that? And it's like, will you adapt? It's like, don't go and train your ass off and get super sore and think like, oh, that's not for me. It's like, you're not equipped for it yet. It's like, you'll get there. I absolutely blast my workouts and I never get overly sore or anything, you know. I recover well most of the time. Sometimes I overtrain a little bit. Most people do not have to worry about that. But I like this approach, and it's not just for muscle growth, actually. It's to get a little mindset thing in here, and a little holistic bodybuilding. You know, it is a sort of, if you can push yourself as hard as you can to a limit, and then just, you know, you reach a point where you literally cannot go anymore, but you make it so by reducing the weight you use or the changing the form you use. You just make it so you can keep going and doing it again, you know. You train your ability to just be a fucking beast that gets the job done, can just push to the literal limit. You train your ability that, you know, if you're unable to do something, it's literally because it was too much. It's never because you didn't try hard enough, because you can give it your all. You see, I like the high intensity, not just because it's been super productive for hypertrophy, but also because of the traits you cultivate doing that, right? Oh yeah, this late progress, it's just something I wanted to bring up here that I might do a longer video on, that I see that some people talk about how, you know, progressive overload, double progression, it would be the main means of progressive overload that I use, which is, you know, you have a rep range, you add reps within the rep range. Let's say it's 5 to 8 reps on a compound. And when you reach 8 reps on a workout, you know, now we can move up in weight and we start over in the lower end of the rep range and work ourselves up before we add weight again, right? Then I see that some people talk about that, well, beyond the intermediate stage, you know, you cannot expect to add reps every workout or stuff like that. I mean, first of all, that's just not my experience. Just today, on all my compounds, I literally, okay, on the first one, the LC chin-up, I didn't add a rep, but I was heavier. I was heavier body weight than last week, so I see that's progress. Added a rep to my weighted dips, added a rep to this like very heavy rowing machine I do, added a rep to a Smith machine, guillotine press, you know. Like in my experience, you can, I'm quite advanced, I can do it. The point is though, what I would say more is that, well, maybe some people, maybe if they start rushing with reps, they don't watch the form you do, but I'm so aware of using the exact same form every time that my progress is not driven of me starting doing half reps or something. But also, yes, sometimes that's what happened with both flat and incline bench for me. Even as I was gaining weight, I've been progressing quite well on both of them. Suddenly, I was just quite stuck, even like backtracked a rep on a workout here and there, when it's the first exercise of the workout. And then instead of just like trying to bang my head against the wall, that's why I now do something like a Smith machine incline bench that I, you know, not my favorite option generally, but take something out. So now suddenly I can make progress. I can add a rep per workout again. So I just want to make that quick point that even into more advanced territory, you can expect when you know, do adjustments at the right time, you should get some kind of progress on at least, you know, 1 or 2 exercises of the workout most of the time, right? And then when you don't, when you actually plateau an exercise, just don't stick with it for too long. Swap it quickly. But last thing I say is just, because that's something I've gotten shit about. The things I get shit about is like, oh, ego lifting, not enough control, never from a person that actually had a better physique than me, of course, usually don't even show the physique, right? But also another thing, is this that I talk about, the progressive overload mindset, kind of go into the workout kind of expecting, I did this last time, I'm going to beat it now, I did 8 reps here, I'm going to try to do 9 now, you know, and so on. But honestly, this mindset is what has worked so well for me to make progress, that I always go in like, yes, I know what I did, I'm gonna try to beat it. It's like, I'm gonna find out, I'm gonna fail if I, you know, don't beat it, and I find out that way. Most of the time, I'm able to do some progress on a few of the exercises per workout. So to me, it's just that, see, progression is really a verb. It's something that you do, you know. Okay, the last things that I won't go too deep into here because we have many individual videos on that. Bulk cut, recomp, you know. Generally, when you're more intermediate plus, I definitely prefer the approach to bulk and cut, right? That we eat in a calorie surplus to fuel gains more, get a little heavier body weight, which will help on certain exercises, and then cut so that we look aesthetic for a while, maybe maintain that throughout the summer. It's kind of my approach to go back to bulking. But recomping, absolutely a good approach for a lot of people, like up until the intermediate stage. If you had some fat to spare, you know, if you're super skinny to begin with, of course, gotta bulk. And kind of, if you're overweight, I mean, cutting is going to be a recomp because you have more extra energy just on you to use in a deficit, right? But I'll say the recomp, even last year, from the start of the year, I went down from like 89 kilos to 87 in 3 months as I was progressing on many exercises. So if you give it, you know, if you have your recovery, you eat high quality nutrition, enough protein, you sleep well, and you fucking push this progression mindset, right? Even at even more advanced, you can do some recomping then. But bulk and cut, I prefer most of the time. Bulking now. Fasting is just an unusual thing. Most natural bodybuilders don't do. Using prolonged fasting as a means of cutting, of course it goes into the holistic bodybuilding. There are many benefits you get from fasting that really has nothing to do with bodybuilding, but in this sense, it's just like, yeah, we can start a cut with a 5-day fast, get a head start like that, you know, no problem. Last thing, I mean, bonus skills and for the difficult. It's like, okay, it is related to this with aesthetics and functional, that just as often as possible, if we can get better at something more than just doing something to put on muscle, you know, if we can learn a skill that also will help us build muscle, why not, you know? And then I just put this, that I think it's fun to do some things just for the difficult, like why I started doing searcher squats, for instance. I mean, they can definitely be good, mainly posterior chain builder. I mean, for me at least, it's a lot of hip hinge in there. But I honestly just started doing it because I thought it was fun, you know. And that's a cool thing when you build a foundation that you are quite strong and functional, flexible from this style of training. When you take on something new like that, you're never going to be super weak. It's like, you know, if you deadlift like 5 plates, you know, and you squat 4, I don't know. When you take on any strange deadlift squat like variation, like a searcher squat, you're just going to be able to move a lot of weight from the beginning. And it fits into the holistic bodybuilding again, like doing beastly exercises like a searcher squat makes you beastly. The example I give as a skill is something that I'm going to get back to this summer. My upper body day on Mondays today, I'm going to train for the muscle up. I started doing that last summer. I had too much like wrist pain or elbow pain to go through with it. I learned it a bit, but it's just that then I will approach it that I start training for the muscle up, and then the pushes and pulls I do, they will be hypertrophic. It's just that I choose now exercises that I think will support the muscle up more, you see. So when we have an opportunity to bake some skills into our hypertrophy training, why not, you know. That's it for today, guys. I feel, man, I'm just hectic there, just running through it now. I hope it all made sense. Please let me know if you have any questions, anything. There are many things here I can follow up on individually. Any video you'd like to see, please let me know. I do holistic bodybuilding coaching, getting jacked and stacked mentally, physically, spiritually, working on ourselves, body, mind, and soul, becoming that person that just is jacked. They look jacked because they are a jacked person, you know, a go-getter, a tough motherfucker. That's silly. But if you are interested, you can send me a DM on Instagram or email me. It's in the description below. I tell you about my different programs. You can pick up my training book, as I mentioned at the start. Everything training, philosophy, mindset related you need to get this shit done, you know. And please subscribe for more content about fitness, fast losing weight, building muscle, self-improvement, stoicism, mental health, philosophy, spirituality, mindset. It is a mindset, guys. Uncommon Sense Bodybuilding. Peace.